28mm RPG here. Today we're going to talk about Numenera and your economy as far as it goes with your pool points or your hit points if you're a D&D enthusiast and have no idea of what I'm talking about in Numenera. So in Numenera, we're going to start with showing you a basic Tier 1 character. I'm going to go over some basics so you know what I'm talking about here. Tier 1 character has might, speed, and intellect or intelligence. For this example, we're going to go with the glaive, which is the fighter type. So a fighter would usually have about 20 might. The speed would be roughly about 11. Intellect will be 8. So these are also your pools. So kind of like the way you would play in Traveler, you have your hit points is all derived from 3 stats. So it's kind of the same. So if you end up with any of these stats going below 0, what happens is you become inhibited or debilitated, and your chances of doing things becomes greatly reduced. So as you play the game, you will be doing tasks and you will be taking damage, and that will be taken out of each of these 3 pools. Now this may sound a little drastic because you think that you got to do some tasks here and you're using up points, or if you're using a power and you're using up points, or you're taking damage and you're using up points, that's going to be a lot of points. So you have to think about your economy. So also keep in mind, for example, this glaive will also have edge. Have an edge of 1 in might, edge of 1 in speed, and an edge of 0 in intellect. This will vary depending on character to character. So in this instance, usually glaives will have an edge of 1 in might, edge of 1 in speed, and edge of nothing in intellect. Here's where it all comes into play. Now we'll go over what reduces your pool. First is damage. Damage comes in various forms. If it's against another kind of humanoid type of character, you're going to receive light, medium, and heavy damage. Light being 2, medium being 4, typically, and heavy being 6. This is the usual damage output of things. So if you're using light weapons, like a stab little dagger or something like that, you'll be able to use it easier in a task, but it will only cause so much damage. Medium weapons, you'll be able to strike and just do damage. The heavy weapons take 2 hands, so keep in consideration of that. All classes some will require that you can only use light damage weapons or light or medium damage weapons or all aspects damage weapons. It's entirely up to how you build your character. Second way of reducing pools is through powers. So if you were like a caster and you cast certain things, sometimes you'll have to pull points out in order to make those effects happen. In other instances, your edge will come into play on that. So every time you are using something that takes a power, say, of 1 point, in order to do an effect like a zap or something like that, if you're going to zap something, it will take a point out of your pool. But if your edge is 1, then it costs nothing. So it becomes a free action. So you go zap and it doesn't cost you anything. So keep in mind, edge is very important. The third way of losing points in your pools is when you are doing tasks. And just to make it simple, to explain it, tasks come in the difficulty from 0 to 10. How you figure out the success of a task, you roll the d20 and it must come above or equal to the target number of each task. So a task of 1 will be a target number of 3. So you're basically taking the target task difficulty, timesing it by 3 in order to come up with the number that you need on this die. And it gives you a nice easy chart to look at here. So as you can see, there's a description: routine, simple, standard, demanding, difficult, challenging, intimidating, formidable, heroic, immoral, and impossible tasks. 1 through 10. And if you could do your math right, you realize 10 is going to be 30 points. So 30 on the die roll. And that is impossible. In fact, anything from 7 or higher is going to be impossible to be done on this die roll because it only goes to 20. And unlike D&D, you do not add bonuses to this die. That does not happen in this game. The main focus in order to get this task difficulty down is by applying more effort. So, let's say, for example, you have a cliff. You have a monster coming up the cliff, and it's some sort of snake-like being with a big mouth like so. Lots of gnashing teeth. There's a boulder up here. This glaive wants to push this boulder onto this monster. So we're going to, as the referee, assign a task difficulty to this. So I would say the task difficulty, the size of the boulder, would be challenging. So challenging is 5. 5 times 3 equals 15. Plus on, so we're going to say task. And we already say D20 roll. So your roll of D20, 15 or higher, is what it's currently at. Now, you can reduce this by applying effort. There's a little handy chart on the back here. So in order to reduce effort, you must expend points out of your pool. And depending on which task you're doing, if it's something involving speed, it'd be taken out of your speed pool. If it's being taken out of this context, your might pool will come in. Your strength is what you're going to be pulling it from. So your might is the pool that you will be taking it from. If you were using like fighting something that was using mind powers and you are resisting it, you would roll according to the difficulty and reducing any effort that you'd be applying against that by taking it out of your intellect pool. So that's how that would work. How this is how the cost-wise goes is if you apply 1 level of effort, it's going to cost you 3 out of your pool minus your edge. So in the case of this, where you're using might and he has an edge of 1, instead of the cost of being 3, it is going to be 2. So if this character pushes this boulder on top and using 1 level of effort, then it will cost 2 points. Now, there is a rule in the book that whatever your tier number is the maximum number of effort that you can apply. Now, if you're playing by that rule, that's fine. You're not going to expend so much effort. However, you may, as a game master, decide to have more than one effort applied. So you could have the player apply 2 levels of effort if you wish to go against the word of the rules in the book. I go by this. I allow 2 extra for my game. So my tier 1 characters can apply 3 levels of effort if they wish to do so. The maximum amount of effort that you can apply in any task will be 6 steps. So keep that in mind. Even the worst task, being level 10, can be only reduced to a level of 4 maximum in difficulty, making the roll of 12 or higher your target. So we'll say well, there's also extra ways that you can reduce the task. You can also reduce it by having somebody assist you. You can also be using something like say you have a biomechanical suit of armor that also helps you in the task against might, so it'll give you an extra effort to apply on that as well. That's fine. You have to ask your game master exactly what the things are that can be used against this as well. You might have some sort of skill or something that will help you. You might have a cipher that will help you. And like I said, an item or an NPC can also help you. So let's say for in this example, and we're going by the book, that you are only allowed to apply 1 tier of effort. So to bring that down to 4, which would be a die roll of 12 or higher, you would have to expend 2 points, which is actually 3, but because of the edge, you get that reduction. Now we say, yeah, an NPC is also going to help, so that brings it down by 1. So instead it's going to be 3 equals 9 or higher in order to succeed. And let's say, just for this example, this character was using some form of like I said, a biomechanical suit that also reduces the effort as well. We'll bring it down to a task of 2, which would mean a 6 or higher in order to succeed. Alrighty, so we do the roll. The character rolls a 1. There's a GM intrusion in this case. Now, if there's a GM intrusion, the GM could say, yeah, it succeeds, but you could pull a card and you could say, would you like to take this intrusion or not? And if the player says, yes, I'll take the intrusion, he gets 2 experience points, and he gets to take one of those experience points and gives it to another player. It's entirely the player's choice. This could succeed on a 1, but I would say this intrusion would cause this area to split off and the player goes down with it. So the player could do a speed check to see whether or not he succeeds on hanging onto the cliff. That's GM intrusion. Now let's say, for example, the player rolled. Instead, we're going back in time, start all over again. He needs a 6 or higher. And this time, it rolls a 14, which is an average success. So the boulder goes off, hits the monster, causes, I would say, 6 points of damage, and knocks the monster down. So, a success. Now, if the player had rolled something like a 19 or actually a 17 or higher, there would be additional bonus added plus an effect, especially when it's a 19 or higher, or a 20 would be damage plus a major effect. So the characters decide on what the major effect. They could say, well, the creature is stunned. So Game Master could say, okay, well, if you rolled the 20, say that that's exactly what happened. Roll the 20. I say yes, the monster is stunned for 1d6 rounds. So it's stunned for 1 round in this case. So that's perfectly fine. So damage. Damage is one way of getting points taken off this pool. Using powers is another way, and rolling for these tasks. So during the gameplay, you're going to end up with, okay, so the character receives like another 4 points of damage, does a speed check a couple of times. So each time that they use the check, it's going to cost them 2 points. So 4 points have been taken off, a couple of speed checks out of there, and say that they fought off some sort of mind technique that tried to invade their brains, and that cost them 3 points. And then later on they did another check, which they went ahead and took another 2 points off of their might for the for another task that they tried to do. Now this is starting to add up, but none of them are bringing any of these stats down below 0, so the character's okay. Now we're going to go over how we recover these rolls. Now the way that you recover these rolls starts number 1. The first time that you try to recover, you do a rest, is 1 action will recover 1d6 plus your tier. So if you're tier 1, it'll be a +1. 1d6 plus 1. The second time you rest will be 10 minutes. Once again, 1d6 plus tier. Third time, and you have to do these in order. You can't do them all mixed up. You can't do a 10 minutes and then a 1 action. You have to do 1 action first, 10 minutes next, then an hour. 1d6 plus 1. Then your final rest, you can only do 4 of these, will be a 10-hour rest. And that is 1d6 plus tier plus 1 in this case. Tier 2, it'd be a +2 on the die roll. Alright? And like I said, you can't interchange. You can't do the 10-hour and then a 10-minute and then a 1 hour and then an action. You can't do that. You have to do the action first, then the 10-minute next, and then the 1 hour after that, and then the 10-hour after that. This may seem weird, but especially when you're thinking 24 hours in a day, there is not 24 hours a day in Numenera. There is 28 hours in the day. 28-hour day. So in my view of it, 10 hours of daylight, 10 hours of night, 4 hours of dawn, 4 hours of dusk. So you can see that your economy is going to be based on these rolls. Now you can roll really high and gain back a whole lot of points. Say for example, you've been rolling throughout the day. Well, your keep in mind, once you hit that 10-minute, 1 hour, your character is going to be out of commission for that 10 minutes or 1 hour or 10 hours, while the other players are going to be able to do stuff. So you might want to work together with the other players in the group in order to have these rests as a full party rest. So keep in mind, if you've already used your 1 action and your 10-minute and you're going on for your 1 hour rest, and the other players haven't used up any of their resting actions yet, they have to use these ones up first before they do a 1 hour with you. So just keep that in mind. So all the players won't be on the same page unless you all decide all at once that you're all going to do one action at the time, and then do a 10-minute all at once at the same time. Now, another way you could do this is at the very end of the day, you've accumulated all this damage here, and you decide you're going to do all 4 of these actions at the end of the day. So your first action, you will get 1d6 plus your tier. Then the next 10 minutes, you'll get another 1d6 plus 1. Then your hour goes by, another 1d6 plus 1. And then your 10 hours, which is 1d6 plus 1. So in the total, it's going to be 11 hours, 10 minutes, and 1 action. So you roll them all together. And for this example, this is a huge roll. Now, on average, every pair of dice is going to be about a 7. That's the average. So if you're thinking of it that way, your average is 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 points average. That would be an average roll. Av of 18 points recovery per day. This here, that's a huge roll. So that's 18, 19, 20, 21 points plus 4, that's 25 points. So in this example, this would recover all of this damage, no problem. Because here we have 5, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 points of damage here that can be recovered. No problem. Resting is one way of recovering all these points. Another way is, say, you're using spray flesh. Spray flesh will only work on might damage, so you could use that. Spray yourself, you get 6 points back. Okay? But if you are doing these actions separately, make sure that you have more than enough points taken off of you in order to make the roll of a 6, 7 points worth it. Because if you're only wounded by 4 points and you decide to rest in action and you roll a 6, well, you've kind of wasted 3 points there on nothing. So wait till you're at least 6 points damage before you do your first 1 action roll, if you're going to roll them all the way through the day. But at the end of the day, yeah, go ahead and roll. Like, sometimes you'll have something interfere with you during the 10-hour rest, so that might occur and disrupt your last period of rest. So keep that in mind as well, Game Masters. Don't always let them roll everything all at once unless they successfully did a full 11 hours of sleep and 10 minutes in 1 action. And there was no interference within that time. You do that in like a tavern or whatever, or any kind of safe spot that the players may be in. So, Synth Spray, other ciphers, some characters will have healing effects. Keep those in mind. Those will also help in recovering, especially healing effects that don't take off any points. Like, for example, we'll say a nano that has a healing ability and has enough edge in there in order to make the healing free. Well, that's awesome. That would be a great boon to have in any party. So keep that in mind. 18 is going to be roughly your average points per day with a tier 1 character that you want to kind of keep in line with. If you have any overage, the next morning you refresh your 4 periods of rest, and first thing in the morning you could do that action to gain back 1d6 right away, and you'll probably have, if not all, pretty close to all your points back if you had any overage from overnight, if you rolled really lousy the first day. So it's not that hard to get back points. And I'm pretty sure if your game master has lots of ciphers coming into your hands, or you're recovering items from different creatures and stuff, you might be able to get certain things that will gain you back points one way or another. So hopefully that gives you some sort of insight on where you should manage your points, and you know, how often you should, you know, utilize your effort rolls, you know, your extra effort applied to your rolls. So that all depends throughout the game. If you've got lots of tasks to do, well, then it's going to be a very intensive gaming session for you, where you're going to be exhausted in you know, some of your pools here. So just keep that all in mind. That's all I have to say on this topic. Hopefully this gives you some sort of understanding with Numenera and where you stand with your pools and how to spend it. And any questions, just put them down below in the comments section. I'll easily be able to answer them for you. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.